Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
What's happening, Rush Nation? Here we are, 6 days until Christmas, 6 days until Fantasy Christmas, the start of Fantasy Football Championship Week. So we're here to help you get there by winning in Week 16. So we're going to do the Bible Part 1 today, Bible Part 2 tomorrow. There'll be a start sits dropped in there somewhere, and then hopefully a Patreon cast. Just to give you an idea, on next week, with it being Christmas week, there won't be a Bible for Week 17. Instead, it will be a flagship show. We'll try and prep and get as much information crammed into that. That's going to be Monday night. And then that should be it, really. I might try and drop some stuff on socials, and there'll be stuff in the Patreon chat. So really, if that's going to be the place to pick up advice in Week 17, my rankings are in there. You can sign up for free in the Patreon and join the free tier, and you'll get access to the rankings, or you can pay us £1 a month, or you can take a trial for the £3 a month and get access to a lot more content, including the Patreon casts as well. So that's going to do it. Patreon.com/5-Yard Rush. So 10 games in this slate. So don't forget, don't get caught out. There's a game tonight. There's 2 games on Saturday, and then we've got the Sunday game. So there's quite a bit going on. So we're going to go ahead and just sort of rapid fire through these 10 games and give you everything you need to know to set those lineups and give you as much insight as possible. We're going to start with tonight's game, Chargers v Broncos. Now, the Chargers in this one weirdly are favored by 3, over under 41.5. I think that's weird. The Chargers got absolutely shellacked at home by the Buccaneers last week. They haven't run the football well. They haven't played well when they've not been able to run the football, and they've gone very sole dimensional. And so when you've got the fact that you've got Pat Surtain, arguably one of the best corners in the NFL, and that ability to really shut down the pass, I'm a little bit nervous here in thinking that the Chargers can win this game. There's a lot of talented players, but I actually would make Denver favorite, and I actually think that the Denver D, if it turns up here, can really stifle the Chargers. So don't fall into some traps. I will say that Quentin Johnson, I've written my article for Fantasy Pros, actually is the worst matchup on the board this week because he's got Pat Surtain. He's definitely, if you picked him up on the back of his performance last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he is an absolute 0 start. You cannot start him anywhere this week. So I actually think that it's good news really for Chargers, because they're going to have to attack this game. They're not going to be able to sort of sit back and control it with the run. Everything's going to go in the air. And I think because of that, I also think it plays nicely for Denver as well. So there should be a decent amount of fantasy points on order tonight. Fingers crossed, certainly more than last week. So I'll get into this. Over under, by the way, 41.5 seems low. Obviously, 2 really good defenses, so that kind of makes sense. But I do think both teams have some offensive threat as well. So probably squeak the over here. I don't think it's going to be too far off that number. I think it's going to be better fantasy-wise for the fantasy-relevant players, because it is quite narrow on both sides. So as much as normally I would say 41.5 is not going to be that many fantasy points to go around, because they're both such narrow trees, I actually think there's going to be a good amount of fantasy points going around here. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Bo Nix is at 11, and Justin Herbert is at 13. So both on the fringes of the quarterback 1 situation. The running back situation, there is no Jaleel McLaughlin. I kind of thought he might be the leader of the attack. But that's not happening this week. Sorry. So instead, we've got sort of a bit of a mishmash at running back. I've got Gus Edwards at running back 34, Javonte Williams at running back 35. With no Jaleel McLaughlin, there is a good chance that I might move Javonte Williams up onto the fringes of the RB2 conversation, but I'm not feeling too confident on him, if I'm truly honest with you. So he might get a little bump when I do my final rankings for tonight later on, given the fact there is no Jaleel McLaughlin, and I haven't moved Javonte up since I took Jaleel McLaughlin out. But I'm not too confident on him. I think he's going to be circa sort of RB 27 to 30 in that range. I'm going to have a final play with it. So I'm not loving the running backs in this game, and if you can fade them at all costs, then that's something you'll definitely need to do here. When we look at the wide receivers here, I do like them a lot more. Cortland Sutton is my wide receiver 11. Ladd McConkey, who does have a little tricky assignment this week, but I'm not too worried. His wide receiver 14. And then Quentin Johnson, as I talked about, terrible assignment. He's also questionable, but I think he'll be fine. Is wide receiver 44 in the week, so I'm staying well away. Josh Palmer and everyone else is completely off my radar. Same said pretty much with the tight ends, although I think there's a case for Stone Smart, but he is my tight end 16 this week. I don't love it, but I think, if I'm looking for those sort of upside plays, he would potentially be one here. As for the defenses here, they're both kind of hovering in here at the bottom end of the DST1. Denver at 10, Chargers at 11. Again, that's because of that over-under 41.5. That kind of makes sense. And then as for the kicking situation here, I have Will Lutz at 12, and I have, I think it's going to be a slightly trickier place here for Cameron Dicker this week. So I'm going to have him at 7, slightly lower than I've had him the last few weeks. That's for sure. Right. Next up is Chiefs v Texans. Chiefs are only favored by 3.5, over under 42. Both these teams haven't fired massively offensively. I would expect the Chiefs to sort of grind this one out, as they kind of have done all season. But again, I think that over under is totally fair, and I think it does point to a potential downer on fantasy points in this one. And so I'm not really happy starting either of these quarterbacks, despite the fact you've drafted them. CJ Stroud is at 18, Patrick Mahomes is at 20. He's been practicing this week, so he is going to go with that high ankle sprain. But I don't think they're near my starting lineup in anything. In Superflex, they're fine, right? But in a 1 QB, it's an issue. Joe Mixon is on the injury list, but I think he'll go at this current state. But I'm not a doctor, so it can change any moment. He is my running back 12 this week. Isaiah Pacheco is at 26. Kareem Hunt is at 39. I don't know if I want to put my entire hopes of a fantasy title on the shoulders of Isaiah Pacheco as he's trying to come back from injury. Nico Collins is at 4. I wrote him up as having a disadvantage matchup for wide receivers this week. He's against Joshua Williams, but he's Nico Collins. He's points per game. He's the wide receiver 2 in fantasy points. So I'm all for Nico Collins. I believe that talent can overcome matchup, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is here by having him at 4. DeAndre Hopkins is at 32. There is some talk that Marquise Brown will come back this week, which will be interesting, and that could unseat a little bit. But effectively, they're the only 2 wide receivers I would consider playing this week. Xavier Worthy, if you want to have that desperation high upside plays at 47, but I don't see it. Tank Dell's all the way down at 50. I don't want to get near that. The tight ends here, Travis Kelce's at 6. He's at a bit of a lower point than he has been. Noah Gray's at 24. Dalton Schultz is at 17. So, yeah, obviously you're starting Kelce. You might not start the other 2, and that makes complete sense. Kansas City Chiefs defense, I do have them at 6. I do think they will do quite well here. The Texans at 19. It's just because they don't turn over the ball over that much, the Chiefs. So I don't see them many big plays. I don't see many sacks coming either. Kyrie Fairbairn is my kicker, 6 this week. Harrison Butker is at 19. I think, again, that low-scoring affair is why I've got Butker significantly lower. And I think that Chiefs D will stop Houston from converting drives into touchdowns, and I think that Kyrie Fairbairn will be the busier of the 2 kickers. The other game on the Saturday here is Ravens v. Steelers. And Ravens Steelers is going to be a really interesting game because this is effectively for the division. If the Steelers win this will pretty much end the Ravens' chances of winning the division. I think it will end. I think it will end Lamar Jackson's MVP hopes as well. Please excuse me. I'm still recovering from that illness from last week. The Ravens are favored in this one by 6.5 points, over under 45. On paper, that kind of makes sense, but I just think the Steelers just always get discredited for no real reason. But they're probably one of the best coached teams, considering they're not as talent rich as other teams. And so I just think, for me, that's a bit of an issue. I don't think the Ravens are going to run out 6.5 point winners against the Ravens. The over under 45 seems to make a good bit of sense, right? I have Lamar Jackson as my quarterback 2. I have Russell Wilson at 23. I think he could get caught in this game quite significantly. So I'm just a little bit concerned by that. And so, for me, I am sort of treading carefully that I think he might not be particularly brilliant, especially depends on the weapons he's got. If I knew he's got his full class of weapons, I might move him up a little bit, but I don't see him being much higher than 18 this week. Derrick Henry is my running back 7 this week. Justice Hill was at 30. And I've got Najee Harris and Jalen Warren together, 31-32. I think they cannibalize each other. I think that Baltimore run defense is very good. I think they will struggle to establish the run. So I think they are going to struggle a little bit. And I think that Jalen Warren's going to get all the passing stuff. And I think Najee Harris is, if he's not getting targets at the moment, it's just going to carry the stuff on the ground. The receivers aren't too high in this game. Zay Flowers is at 22. Rashad Bateman is at 39. And then I don't have a Pittsburgh receiver that high up right now because obviously we're not expecting, at the moment I've got George Pickens unranked. And then all the other Pittsburgh receivers are very, very low down. Now, again, if Pickens goes, both Wilson and Pickens will jump up my rankings quite significantly, which is why I've got Wilson the way it is. Again, I think Wilson can jump to 18, maybe 17, but he's as low as he is because I'm not factoring that he's going to have George Pickens here, and I think they're going to struggle. Mark Andrews is my tight end 7, Pat Freiermuth my tight end 12. Freiermuth might get an arrow down if Pickens comes into this. So that's one to keep an eye on. It's a bit of a soft play right now as it stands, so just keep an eye on that one. I do have the Ravens at 14. I have Pittsburgh at 23. And then the kickers here, it's not going to be the premium kicking range for Justin Tucker. He's been dropped in quite a lot of leagues because he is missing kicks, but he's done better the last couple of weeks, but he's at 14. But Chris Boswell has been money all season. He's at 2. And I think he's going to do a good job this week once again. Right, moving on to the next one. And just pulling it up here. Right. Bengals v Browns, start of the slate for Sunday. Bengals are favored by 7.5 points. Over under 47. This will all be led by the Bengals. I actually think that line's soft. I think Bengals can win this by 10 plus. And I think the over under 47 is being carried by the Bengals. Browns are starting DTR. I'm not too convinced that he's the right option. I feel like this is a money play from Jimmy Haslam. I feel like the incentives that James Winston's paid, so every time he plays more than 50% of snaps in a game that the Browns win, he earns a significant amount of money. I think it's $500,000 or $1 million. I wrote this up for an article for the Patreons this week. So that, I think, plays a part in the money that they don't want to pay it out in a losing season. So I think that's a real issue, and I think that's a big part of it. Plus, there's additional incentives for Winston if he plays 50% of snaps on the season. It's another reason I think he's been benched. So I think he's benched for money reasons. I don't think it's for play. Browns aren't making the playoffs. They're just going to phone it in. And I think you're going to see a significant impact here on the Browns as a result, because they won't move that ball as well. Joe Burrow is my QB4 on the week. DTR is at 29. So again, wouldn't even start him in a super flex. I don't own him. I don't want him in any of my rosters. I'm not too confident that he will do too well this week. Chase Brown, my running back 6. Jerome Ford is at running back 17. He's probably the only Brown this week, other than maybe David Njoku, I would say is fantasy relevant. Maybe Jerry Jeudy as well, but I mean, it's a stretch. Jamar Chase is my wide receiver 1. I think he's going to eat this week. Those corners have been a bit soft all season for Cleveland, and I think that's going to be a real issue. T. Higgins is at 10. I think both these guys can eat this week. Jerry Jeudy's down at 33. He's a flex play. I think if anyone's going to eat, it will be him. But I am concerned, and I don't know if I want to bet my tournament life or my playoff life on Jerry Jeudy. If I've got no other option, then fine. Cedric Tillman's still injured, so not sure he's going to go. I don't have him ranked currently. Elijah Moore's down at 60. I'm not getting involved with him at the moment either. And then, as I said, David Njoku is one I'll definitely be keeping an eye on. And he's one that I definitely think will have some play. At the moment, he's down at 19 because I'm not really sure. I've kind of hedged it, not knowing if he's going to be healthy or not. If he's healthy, he moves straight up into the top 7 or 8 for me. Probably down at 8, I think, is probably where I'll settle with him, just because I don't know the volume he's going to get from DTR. But I think if anyone gets volume, it will be him. As for Mike Gesicki, he's at 21. I'm not too concerned about him this week. I think this is a great week to start the Bengals D, who have been terrible all season. I think they'll have a good week. They're at 5. The Cleveland D, I want absolutely no part of. They're at 29 this week. To be honest, I could put them last. So it's not a great spot for them. And then as we get to the kicking situation here, Cade York is in for Evan McPherson. He's at 13. So again, he's an all right start. You feel all right with him. And kicking against his old team, he's got a bit of a revenge game going on. Dustin Hopkins, I've got a 32. I just want, again, no part of any Browns this week if possible. Bears, Lions. Lions coming in 6.5-point favorites despite all the injuries that they have. Over the Bears, divisional game. Over under 48 again. I think most of that is being carried by the Lions here. And this makes sense. The Lions are putting up points for fun everywhere despite the injuries that they've got. I think they'll roll the Bears fairly easily. I think the over-under is probably a slight stretch because I think their D is probably better than the line is giving them credit for. And I also think the 6.5 is a little soft. So I'll take the 6.5 and take the under here and think that the Lions will win this one quite comfortably. Jared Goff is my QB7 this week. Caleb Williams is at 19. So yeah, definitely feel like you can start Goff. And if you haven't been starting him, then I think you've been missing out on some really good points. Jahmyr Gibbs, without much competition, he might get a little bit from Vacchi, a little bit from Reynolds. He's at 2 this week. I think he's going to be unleashed. DeAndre Swift is at 24 this week. Craig Reynolds, I've got a 56. He could be anywhere, really, Craig Reynolds. He could be in the 30s, in the 20s, but I've got him at 50. I'm just not convinced that they're going to commit to one guy. I think him and Vacchi will kind of get a chop roll, and most of it will go to Gibbs. So as in not commit to one guy, I mean like behind Gibbs. Gibbs will get all the work, is what I meant. Amon-Ra St. Brown, after a great week last week, he's at 7. DJ Moore is at 21. Jameson Williams, 34. Keenan Allen, 35. I think you can start all 4 of these players reasonably comfortably. But yeah, anyone else, Roman Dunze, who has got a good matchup this week, I just don't trust with this offensive scheme right now. I've got Sal Laporta at 8, as I said. I think I might move. And Njoku would definitely go above him if I knew that he was definitely going to play. So that is 1. So he will get a slight arrow down, but I think he's a start play this week. The Detroit Lions are sitting at 7, so you can start them fairly comfortably. The Bears are at 30. I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Lions here. Famous last words. Jake Bates is my kicker 1. Feel pretty good about him. Right, Panthers, Cardinals. Cardinals still trying to cling on to a wild card or even win the division. They're only 1 game out, despite being 3rd in the division, so they've still got a chance. So they are 4.5-point favorites over under 47. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably smash the under here. Panthers sort of got a bit humbled last week, showing some signs of life, but Bryce Young made some pretty bonehead plays last week, and so I expect Arizona to win this comfortably. Now I've got Kyler Murray at 8 this week in my quarterback rankings. There's some incentives, especially with him running the football, that he'll want to get paid. So I expect to see some rushing upside from him that we've not seen for a few weeks or months now. So I do expect to see that and start seeing more running in Kyler Murray's game over the next few weeks. Bryce Young's at 24. I don't want to trust him in any format, really. Very low floor, very low ceiling. James Conner's at 5. He's been running pretty good as of late. Chuba Hubbard's at 11. Same thing. Both those guys have got bell cow roles. You don't need to worry about anyone else there at the running back position. And then as for the receivers, I think it's a decent one for Marvin Harrison this week. He's at 30. Adam Thielen's at 38. And Jalen Coker's a bit of an upside play here. He's at 51, but he has the opportunity to maybe reach a bit higher. I'm not necessarily loving it, but if you're sort of in that desperation, I need someone to put up a big number. It's him over anybody I would expect this week, except for maybe 1 or 2 other players. So, I don't mind throwing him in for a bit of chaos, but I don't have that huge expectation. Trey McBride, he is at 2 this week. Still waiting on a touchdown from him. I'm not worried about what's going on with the Carolina Panthers tight ends here. And then I actually have the Cardinals at 9 this week. I think they'll get some turnovers, and that defense has been sneakily good this season. And I think they'll continue to do that, to do well this week and force some turnovers from the Carolina Panthers, who have been giving the ball away significantly, especially last week, but earlier in the season as well. And then Chad Ryland's at 11. You can start him fairly comfortably this week. I think he'll have a decent week. Commanders v Eagles. This is a big one for the division. And Commanders trying to hold on to that 7th seed in the wild card race. It could open up for other teams behind if they don't keep winning. Eagles only favoured by 3.5. I think that's probably a slight testament to the fact they haven't really blown out many teams. But I also think they've kind of been holding things back, trying to get into the playoffs. So I know there's been some sort of public outcries, but really they've had a pretty soft schedule this season. And that's kind of shown with the caliber of the opponents that they've played. So I do actually think that the Eagles here can do something on the Commanders, but then I also wouldn't be shocked with the Commanders. They've got great utility players, and they've got that ability to stop drives and to convert touchdowns. And with Jaden Daniels, anything is possible. So it's a good line, but anything can kind of happen. But I will say that I like the over here at 45.5. I think it will go over that. I think both teams will put on a bit of a show here. Might be cagey at first, but I do think, especially late in this game, it will open up quite nicely. Jalen Hurts, he's my quarterback 3. Jaden Daniels, quarterback 6. I think of the two defenses, I'll take Philly's defense. I think they can contain a little bit here, but definitely start both options this week. Barkley is about to hit his last individual incentive. He needs 26 or something rushing yards, so he'll get there this week. He's my running back 1 this week. Brian Robinson Jr. is at 19 this week. I've put Kenneth Gainwell at 40. I do think that they could pull, if this game gets out of hand, they could pull Barkley and let Gainwell have some touches here. AJ Brown's at 8. We're starting to see some signs of life of him. Terry McLaurin's at 13, but he does have a tough assignment against Quinion Mitchell there. So one to definitely keep an eye on, but I believe the talent will prevail. Devonta Smith is at 26. He is questionable, but I do expect him to go. He has a significant upside from there as well. So 26, I think, is a good floor for him, but I could see him easily creeping up into the teens with a decent showing here. I don't like the tight ends here because I think Zach Ertz isn't going to play. I think he's going to be in the concussion protocol, which means John Bates is going to go in. So I have Ertz at 34 at the moment, but I'm not really too confident. Oh, sorry, I have Ben Sinnott here and John Bates are the two. I think they'll cannibalize each other. I'm not really loving them, so I wouldn't start either of them. Grant Calcaterra was pretty much missing last week. He's my tight end 25, so I'm not loving him. I swapped him out in every league I had him in for Brenton Strange this week because I just don't think he's going to get the volume. Eagles are at 13 this week. I do think Washington can put up some points. And Jaden Daniels will be pretty good at protecting the football. The Commanders at 26. I think they're a good D. I don't know if they're going to get many turnovers off the Eagles this week. And then looking at the kickers here, Jake Elliott's at 17. I think it's going to be Greg Joseph that will go, but Zane Gonzalez is questionable, so we'll see what happens. But either way, I think their kickers will be sort of in the bottom 6 or so this week. Right, moving on to Falcons Giants. Must win for the Falcons to stay alive and try to win the division, and as a result, try and get into the playoffs. They are 8.5-point favorites versus the Giants. The over-under is 42. Yeah, I mean, they've made the significant change at quarterback and have benched Kirk Cousins for Michael Penix Jr. A lot of people scratching their heads, but you know, I think if you're going to do it, this is definitely the game to do it. For sure. So I actually think that it's not a bad move, but I do think from a fantasy perspective, it's going to have an impact. And so this is a really hard game to call fantasy-wise because we've never seen Michael Penix Jr. play a game in the NFL. And so what does that actually mean? It's really hard to call. You got a team that are really low in confidence offensively. You know, they won 15-9 against the Raiders on Monday Night Football. It's their first win in 5-6 weeks. You know, it's a tough place to be, and it's a real struggle to see how this kind of goes. So I've had a good stab, but this is the game of all the games on the slate. I have probably the least amount of confidence in my picks. So I want to get it out there because if you think differently, then by all means, you should anyways go with what you believe. It's your team, but I don't necessarily mind if you disagree on my take on this game because in all actuality, there isn't anything to base it off. We have a very limited offense with a quarterback who's never played before. So there could be a completely different scheme. And, you know, him and Cousins are two very, very different quarterbacks. So I've got Michael Penix at 28 because I just don't know what we're going to get. And Tommy DeVito's at 30 because I do know what we're going to get. And it's not going to be overly fantasy relevant. I think Bijan Robinson gets the majority of the role here. He's probably the only guy I feel really confident on this week. He's at 4. Tyrone Tracy is questionable. He's at 27. They just don't tend to lean on the running backs here since they've got rid of Daniel Jones. Drake London is at 15. Malik Neighbors is at 16. I think these are the only 2 wide receivers I feel half confident with. Darnell Mooney got a 0 last week. So I'm a little scared of that, and that's got him down to wide receiver 40. Again, I just don't think he's a player I can put my fantasy playoff tournament life on the line with coming off the back of a 0. And that might be overreactionary, but with a new quarterback, we don't know what we're going to get. I just think it's too much risk. So I could be dead wrong, and Darnell Mooney could go and be the wide receiver 5, and I'll sleep fine because it's just too much risk. Unless I know I'm going to lose anyway and I need the upside. Kyle Pitts is at 20 again, and Daniel Bellinger is lower than that. He's at 35 because he's injured. So, again, you could try and make a case that there's a good case for Pitts to have a comeback, but I'm just not into it at this stage of the season with too many unknown factors. Atlanta Falcons are at 4. I do think the D's worth starting this week. I think they will suffocate the Giants as they did on Monday Night Football with the Raiders. So Young Hoku is on IR. At this point, I don't know if there is a kicker for the Atlanta Falcons at time of recording. So we need to wait for them to sign one, or if they have signed one, I've not seen it. So I will be trailing that news over the next sort of 24 hours to see if there is one. I guess I will evaluate that. The only name I've sort of seen is Lindholm, which I don't know a lot about him. So with kickers, I don't know a lot about. They'll sit in the 20s. So I'll sort of wait on that one. But that's kind of where I am with Coot on IR. All right. 2 more games in this slate, and then we'll wrap this one up. We're going to start with Colts Titans. Colts favored by 3.5. They are still technically alive in the playoff race. Titans are dead, of course, over under 42.5. Yeah, I mean, Mason Rudolph, I think, probably makes the Colts bigger favorites than 3.5. So I'd probably take the 3.5. But the over under 42.5. Neither of these teams are prolific offensively. I feel pretty comfortable. I've probably taken the under. I'm not convinced that the Tennessee Titans are going to score many points here. I've got Anthony Richardson at 17. All his points will come from rushing. I'm not convinced there's a big floor here for passing. Mason Rudolph is at 32. Again, he might have more experience than some of these quarterbacks, but what I've seen isn't good, and I don't really want to see it again this season. But here we are, especially someone with Calvin Ridley shares down the stretch. It wouldn't surprise me if Mason Rudolph is benched in this game and they bring Will Levis back, because they've done this before and they'll do it again. In running backs here, I've got Jonathan Taylor at 14. I think he's probably the best offensive weapon in this game. Tony Pollard is at 22. He is carrying an injury, but I do expect him to go. Tajee Spears, after last week, he got quite a bit of receptions, but I think that will drop this week. He's at 33. I don't feel super confident in him, so I'd be benching him if I can. I'd move Calvin Ridley all the way down to 27. This would actually be quite a good matchup for him, but with Mason Rudolph, I can't put him any higher than that. Josh Downs at 41. He's the guy on the Indy side that has the upside. If I had to start any of these wide receivers, it would be him. I'm probably not going to unless I'm absolutely desperate, because I think I'm just going to fade this game as much as I possibly can. I just don't think it's going to be pretty. Michael Pittman's at 46. And again, I'm probably being generous putting him there. He should be outside the top 50, but there's me with a small soft spot for him. I think he could put something together, but 46 isn't that impressive, and I certainly wouldn't be starting him. The only tight end in this game worth anything is Chicken Quanko. He's at 23. Again, I'm not starting him. So it might be the defense here that might get some play this week, as I just wait for it to load here. So I have India 8 and Tennessee at 16. So both viable, but I'd probably start the Colts this week if I had a choice between the two. And again, as for the kickers, not starting either. Don't think there's enough points here. Both my kickers here will be outside the top 20 this week. So again, don't feel the need to start Gay or Falk, even though Falk is probably the most accurate kicker in the NFL this season. We'll finish with the last game of the early slate. It's Jets v Rams. Rams favored by 3. Over under 46.5. I guess that's putting some comfort into what the Jets have done on offense the last couple of weeks with Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. So 46.5 feels a little steep for me, but fine. I get the logic. I can see how the Vegas lines have got there. I'd probably take the Rams as a better coach team. at 3. I think that probably makes some sense. But there is some concerns in this team. So I will say this, that I don't think that I like the over here in this one. I think it'll be under, but I do think the Rams will win it by more than 3. Aaron Rodgers at 12 based on his recent performances. Matt Stafford is at 14. So again, both of these are very good starting options this week. Kyron Williams, he had 29 carries last week, but didn't find the end zone. That shortened his upside. He's at 8 this week. Breece Hall's at 21. Isaiah Davis is at 43. They're just deciding to just let Aaron Rodgers sling it, which isn't bad, but it does hurt Breece Hall quite significantly. Puka Nacua is at 2. Devontae Adams is at 9. Garrett Wilson at 20. Cooper Kupp's at 23. And actually, upon revision, don't be surprised if he falls outside that wide receiver 2 range. He put up a 0 last week. They might try and get him some targets off the back of that. But having said that, he's got a tough matchup this week. So I'm not necessarily convinced it's a great play to have him in your starting lineup, unless again you're desperate. But yeah, I don't think he's got the upside that he used to have. Famous last words, but he could be a volume reception play in PPR leagues. Don't worry about the tight ends here; they're not going to be ranked anywhere significant. The Jets are at 15, the Rams are at 24. I just think that the Jets can force turnovers. Don't think the Rams will force the turnovers here, but I do think that the Rams will put up less points, but I don't think they're going to get the sacks. And I'm not worried about the kickers here. All my kickers in this game are outside of the top 20. So that's going to do it for this edition. That's going to cover off the 10 games tonight, Saturday, and the early slate Sunday. I should put you in a good spot to set these lineups. Cover most of the game, 6 to go. We'll put that out first thing in the morning. So go ahead and enjoy that. I look forward to speaking with all of you tomorrow. Until then, Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.